Good morning. Good morning. It is a beautiful morning. As someone has said to me earlier in the week, it might be raining, but it is not raining on our parade. I'm Susan Marinov-Zausner. I'm a president of the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, and on behalf of all of our trustees and all of the members of the Intrepid, it's an honor, it's a privilege to welcome you to our annual Memorial Day ceremony. We extend a special welcome, particularly to those military personnel and veterans who are here today. We salute you for the commitment to the security of our nation, and we salute you for protecting the freedom that we enjoy in this country every day. Thank you. Navy Band Northeast, thank you very much. It was beautiful. I am honored to introduce our special guests on stage with me. I do ask that you hold your applause until everyone is introduced. Vice President of the Intrepid Former Crew Members Association, Mr. Joe Litschauer. Deputy Command Chaplain, Navy Regent Mid-Atlantic, Chaplain Travis Mosier. Vice Chairman of the Intrepid Museum, Mr. Mel Irmagut. Co-Chairman of the Intrepid Museum, Mr. Bruce Mosler. Commander of U.S. Fleet Forces Command, Admiral Phil Davidson, and the 109th Mayor of the City of New York, the Honorable Bill de Blasio. We are honored to welcome some very special guests who are with us today. Please, again, if you will, hold your applause till the end. Major General John Love, United States Marine Corps. Rear Admiral Francis Pulowski, United States Coast Guard. Commodore Daniel McKeegan, Flag Officer, Canadian Naval Outreach. Deputy Supreme Allied Commander, Transformation of the German Armed Forces, Admiral Manfred Nielsen. Speaker of the New York City Council, Ms. Melissa Mark Viverito. Commissioner of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, Mr. Tom Finkelpearl. Commissioner, Veteran Services, Ms. Lori Sutton. And may I welcome, with great privilege, two survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Mr. John Seeley from the 25th Infantry Division, Schofield Barracks at Wheeler Field, Hawaii, and Mr. Armando Chick Galela, a survivor of the attack as well, and the Intrepid has been privileged to host him here each year for the December 7th service. Remain standing, please. Ladies and gentlemen, do remain standing as our national colors are advanced, and please remain standing for the performance of our national anthem by the Navy Band Northeast and for the invocation by Chaplain Travis Mosier. Present the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. On Memorial Day, we honor all those who made the ultimate sacrifice protecting our nation and our freedom. We are so pleased that of all the places you chose, that you could have chosen to have been, you chose to be with us right here on this legendary aircraft carrier. Throughout Intrepid's history, more than 270 of its sailors gave their lives aboard this ship and in the skies above. Many of the brave men who served with them are here with us today. May I ask all of Intrepid's former crew members, my personal heroes, to please stand and be recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, forgive me if I will ask you one more time to rise, and we will now have the invocation.
Yesterday, as many of you know, we lost a sailor, a member of the elite U.S. Navy SEALs who died not far from here when his parachute malfunctioned. Like all true heroes, he gave his life. No one took it from him. He gave his life for his country. Today, as we honor all those who laid down their lives for our country, we have a very present reminder of their sacrifice. Our thoughts and prayers are with our newest fallen hero and his loved ones. Now, as we turn to our individual sources of strength, I invite all those who wish to pray to bow with me as I offer this prayer. Almighty God, to whom all hearts are open, all desires known, and from whom no secrets are hid. You know how many times we've passed by symbols of our freedom without a conscious thought. A flag, a uniform, or this great vessel on which we're gathered. Many times we've seen without comprehending. We've heard without understanding. But not this day. This is not a day for thoughtlessness. This is not a day for busyness. This is not a day for us to be consumed by our own preoccupations. This is a day when we pause to honor those who laid down their lives in the service of our country and to remember the high price they and their loved ones paid so that we might breathe free air and sleep safely in our beds. It is fitting for us to pay our respects on this hallowed spot, the very steel beneath our feet, having tasted the blood of heroes, martyrs to the cause of freedom. Lord, we ask that you safeguard not only the sanctity of their memory, but also the sanctity of the ideals for which they died. Protect all our brave men and women in uniform who selflessly serve in harm's way, prepared at any moment to lay down their lives for us and our freedom. Be with them and their families. God bless us, God bless the armed forces, and God bless the United States of America. Amen.
Chaplain, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At the Intrepid, unlike other cultural institutions, the actual physical plant, that's our museum, the steel and the rivets that hold this great ship together, bear a direct connection to the real lives of the men who served aboard. Real people molded by valor and sacrifice on the very decks we are within today. We understand that it is our responsibility to honor Intrepid's gloried past, and it is also the responsibility of all of us to remember all the servicemen and women who have paid the ultimate price for us. At Intrepid, we use personal experiences and this massive beauty of technology to educate and inspire our future generations, to launch those generations towards greater achievements in science, engineering, and aviation, the fields that have been integral to Intrepid's history and critical to our nation. We inspire leaders who will chart new courses both for this museum but also for our nation through unknown waters we can't even yet imagine. Intrepid has an incredibly exciting and fulfilling year ahead. Just this month, we opened our exhibit, Drones is the Sky the Limit, on our pier. This exhibit, the very first of its kind, helps us to promote the awareness and understanding of history of science and service, and to explore the history and the future of drone innovation in aerospace, engineering, and humanitarianism. And this is exactly the type of exhibit that engages our youth and creates important conversations about our future. It's important that we encourage today's younger generations to continue the exploration of innovation, not only in aerospace and engineering, but in all facets of life. As a not-for-profit educational institution, last year alone, we delivered over 1,000 individual education programs for more than 20,000 students. We offer K-12 curriculum-based programming in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and we offer sensory-sensitive programming to those families with autism, cognitive disabilities, those who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind and partially sighted, and those who have dementia in their families. In addition, we're able to offer some very special programs to veterans and military personnel, those who have returned with combat-related trauma and other stressors. Our military family programs provide a safe space, a supportive museum experience for returning service members from Iraq and Afghanistan and all veterans from past conflicts, with the aim of building a community of recently reunited families and easing the transition back home. Our Intrepid after-hour programs offer exclusive access to explore the museum and its collection, and an opportunity for veterans to express their own military stories and experiences. And we offer Vet Video Chats, a video conferencing program which provides social connections and stimulating conversations for veterans who just cannot physically be here. The Intrepid Museum is accessible to all veterans, regardless of distance, finances, or abilities. Without the dedication of our trustees, our co-chairman, and the Fisher family who saved this great ship from the scrapyard, none of this would be possible. I am proud to introduce a dedicated Intrepid leader. A longtime vice chairman of the museum, he was chairman of one of Wall Street's premier law firms for almost 20 years. He served for many years on the Defense Business Board of the Department of Defense and on the senior advisory boards of both the United States Southern Command and European Command. He's also recently been serving as an advisor to many four-star admirals with respect to their transitions from the military to the private sector upon retirement. He is a recipient of the Exceptional Public Service Medal, among the highest civilian awards of the Secretary of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome Mr. Mel Immergut.
Thanks. Memorial Day is our annual holiday for remembering those who have died while serving their country as members of our armed forces. We are truly blessed today to have as our Memorial Day speaker on Intrepid Admiral Phil Davidson, the current commander of the United States Fleet Forces Command, which is one of the largest components of our entire United States Navy, the most powerful and largest naval force in history. A few years ago, we began an important new tradition by having a representative of one of our allied naval forces as our guest on Memorial Day. We started with the Minister of Defense of Colombia, who has now returned to Colombia to be the favorite to be their next president. Last year, we had the head of the Canadian Navy, and this year we're privileged to welcome Admiral Manfred Nielsen of the German Armed Forces. Admiral Nielsen is the current Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Transformation of NATO. He works closely in that capacity with Admiral Davidson, and it's a privilege for us to have such an important member of our crucial NATO allies' excellent military with us. Welcome, Admiral Nielsen, and thank you very much for joining us today. National security concerns preoccupy every citizen of the United States now. Terrorism as embodied by ISIL and Al-Qaeda, aggressive foreign state powers like North Korea and Russia, relations with friendly countries like members of the NATO alliance, budgetary constraints, and a host of other issues make our military as important now as it has been at any time in our history. Intrepid is, in addition to Grant's Tomb, the only major military installation in the city of New York. Memorial Day is our most solemn day, of course, commemorating those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defending our country. It's therefore inspiring to have as our speaker on this Memorial Day, on board this great ship Intrepid, a leader like Admiral Davidson. He's truly extraordinary, as I can tell you, having known him now for almost 4 years. Admiral Davidson is a native of St. Louis, and in his role as the current commander of United States Fleet Forces, he's based in Norfolk, Virginia. He mans, trains, and equips over 125 ships, 1,000 aircraft, and 103,000 active duty service members and civilian government employees. As commander of United States Fleet Forces Command, he's responsible for providing combat-ready forces to our various numbered fleets and combatant commanders around the globe in support of U.S. national interests. You know, that the job now, Commander Fleet Forces, used to be called Commander-in-Chief Atlantic Fleet. A number of years ago, then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld decided that there could only be one Commander-in-Chief, and he renamed the job to what it is today. But I think Admiral Davidson would have admirably fulfilled the Commander-in-Chief title that there used to be that came with this job. During past assignments, he's commanded the United States Sixth Fleet, Carrier Strike Group 8, which has Eisenhower as its aircraft carrier, Gettysburg, and Taylor. He's regarded as one of the most imaginative and accomplished officers in our Navy. Our Memorial Day ceremony here involves remembrance of all of our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and women who have given their lives so we may be free. We have a tradition of Memorial Day speakers from all branches of our military. Obviously, being on board Intrepid and with Kearsarge right next door to us is particularly powerful to have one of the nation's leading naval officers as our speaker this year to help us in our remembrance. It's with the greatest honor and respect that I present to you the Commander of United States Fleet Forces Command, Admiral Phil Davidson. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. Mel, that was too generous. Thank you very much. I'd like to say to New York City and Mayor Bill de Blasio, sir, on behalf of the nearly 4,000 sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen and women here this week, thank you once again for a truly extraordinary Fleet Week here in 2017. Your city, as always, opened its arms to the sea services and showed us all what true patriotism feels like. We were honored to be in the city representing this great nation once again, and I'd like to add my thanks to the city's first responders, the NYPD, the fire department, EMTs, and security, not only for their presence today and the security they provide Intrepid and all my ships here in port, but for keeping us all safe throughout the Fleet Week's week-long events. So thank you, first responders, as well. I must say especially thank you to the Jersey City first responders and the Jersey City Medical Center, who did so much to assist our Navy SEAL, one of the Leapfrog parachute team who died just yesterday. This young special operator's death is an all too real reminder of the hazards our men and women face when building the skills necessary to defend this great nation. Our thoughts and prayers are with him, his family and loved ones, and his team this Memorial Day. Susan, thank you. The Intrepid Museum does a spectacular job in and out of the weather, and big crowds or big weather, the Intrepid can make it all happen. You, Ken Fisher, Mel, Bruce Mosler, and Joe Litschauer honor us all and honor our country by continuing to tell the story of the Intrepid and its remarkable history. Thank you so very much. Thank you for keeping the story alive, and thank you for such an outstanding job with so many events this week right here on board. As the fleet commander and a wistful former ship's captain, I can tell you we take great pride in our ships, our crews, and the missions we accomplish. That is all well evident here in Intrepid. So great work to you and your team. Thank you very much. And to the rest of our proud veterans here today, whether you serve for 2 years or 42 years, your commitment to service and country never goes without notice. If you're a veteran of the armed forces, will you please stand and be recognized this morning? Please. Thank you. I also have to acknowledge my very good friend, Admiral Manfred Nielsen of the Deutsche Marine, the German Navy. With us today is the senior Allied representative for the wreath-laying ceremony. Admiral Nielsen is NATO's Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Transformation and is headquartered in Norfolk, and he's a very good friend. Welcome, Admiral. Thank you for being here today. Distinguished guests, it is a distinct honor for me to be able to represent all 5 of our nation's armed services today. I had the good fortune to re-enlist some 33 sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, as well as promote 9 young Marine and Navy officers at the 9/11 Memorial on Friday. During the course of the ceremony, I told them that many Americans will see them on the street this week, and they'll thank them likely for their sacrifice. I reminded these sailors and Marines and Coast Guardsmen that their service is not a sacrifice, that I consider it a great privilege to serve this country. The sacrifice, as we all know it, is the word reserved for our war dead, and fittingly the basis for our remembrance, for keeping faith on Memorial Day. Intrepid forms a perfect setting for today's ceremony. The ship has served this nation in peace and war for 31 years. And as Susan mentioned earlier, some 270 Intrepid sailors gave their lives aboard or above this ship. As a nation, we need to remember the sheer scale of our war dead sacrifice. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died in wars and conflict. Of those, tens of thousands rest in graves and oceans distant from our home. We have reminders everywhere. Right over here on the port elevator, by the portside hangar bay door on November 26, 1944, this hangar bay and that elevator was the setting for a grim burial at sea for some 69 officers and crew. Navy photographs show a particularly somber event. Bodies sewn up in plain canvas burial shrouds neatly lined up on deck, waiting to be committed to the deep by their shipmates. In the same photographs, you see the ship's bulkheads are blackened from the recent battle damage, and the crew is still wearing combat-stained dungarees, their faces etched with battle shock. I am taken at how young these blue jackets appear. It is one of the paradoxes that the older you become, the younger our sailors seem to be in the Navy. And the awful reality is that when youth falls in combat, the sacrifice is that much more profound. And that is the sacrifice we recognize today. Memorial Day is Remembrance Day, the day all Americans refresh our compact with those who paid the last full measure. It is our way of keeping faith, of expressing our eternal gratitude to the fallen and lasting compassion to the survivors. I want you all to know that New York City is central to the nation's keeping faith with our war dead. It is a story worth telling because it is a wonderful example of how much a citizen can, in his or her own right, keep faith with our fallen and make a lasting contribution. In November 1918, Ms. Moyna Michael was a volunteer with the YWCA working not far from here at Hamilton Hall in Columbia University. She had read a short three-stanza poem written in 1915 by a Canadian Army physician, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, and it was called In Flanders Field. In Moyna's autobiography, she described how she experienced a deeply spiritual moment, as if she was being spoken to by voices silenced in death. And it is most fitting that we have the Royal Canadian Navy participating just this week here at Pier 94. The part of the poem that inspired this young woman was the challenge for the living to keep faith with the fallen. The poem, of course, was a plea from the dead, from McCrae's last stanza. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. Moyna immediately put pen to paper and wrote her own short three-stanza poem. And in that poem, she gave voice to the living, taking up the challenge to keep the faith, and ends her poem with the lines, "Fear not that ye have died for naught. We will teach the lesson that ye wrought in Flanders Field." So Memorial Day is the day reserved for keeping faith, to ensure Americans from all walks of life preserve a spiritual connection with our war dead. Moyna, of course, is the catalyst behind the memorial poppy's adoption as the national emblem of remembrance by the American Legion as well as the British Legion. And she purchased the very first few poppies at Wanamaker's right here in town. As with Moyna Michael, we need to remain attuned to this sacrifice. This is indeed the responsibility of the living. None of us can speak for those who have died. Few of us can speak for the loved ones left with only their grief, longing to understand the true nature of the sacrifice, the fallen's last few moments, and the unfulfilled promise of what was to come. What comfort can be found? After all, General Sherman's observation was war is not glory. It is indeed all hell. But we can ponder for some few moments on Memorial Day, and indeed perhaps on all days, the staggering price the founders of this nation foresaw in the Declaration of Independence, that their liberty and ours is indeed founded on the idea, the principle, that to obtain a more perfect freedom, it would require them to pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. This has not changed since that fateful day in July 1776, and it is a staggering price indeed. The principle and the pledge is what makes us strong as a nation. It binds us together under our common cause, and it is the reason that we must keep the faith with our war dead, understand their sacrifice, and know that it is the price of our tireless pursuit of liberty. Some 7 blocks from here, just off 52nd Street, there's a bronze statue of a World War I doughboy in DeWitt Clinton Park. Engraved in the statue's plinth are the words from Colonel McCrae's poem, In Flanders Field. If ye break faith who die. No, we will not break faith. For those in the nation's service who have fallen in combat, we will not forget. We will never forget. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce co-chairman of the Intrepid Museum, Mr. Bruce Mosler. Bruce is chairman of global brokerage of Cushman & Wakefield, Inc., the world's largest independent real estate services firm, and as co-chairman of the Intrepid Board of Trustees, a passionate champion of the museum. He cares deeply about the well-being of our military personnel and their families, and as such, he is a member of IAVA, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, the Navy SEALs Foundation, and Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families. He serves as chairman of the board of the Business Executives for National Security and countless other civic and charitable organizations. Please welcome Mr. Bruce Mosler.
Thank you very much, Susan. Admiral, thank you for your extraordinary remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, members of our military and our allies, and veterans and your families, thank you all for joining us at Intrepid this morning. Today we recognize the service and sacrifice of those who have paid the ultimate price, defending America throughout our nation's history. Such sacrifice is clearly necessary in these troubled times when America faces fresh threats from enemies throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we have forward deployed almost 200,000 troops in 177 countries. And as we recognize today those who have given their lives, we remain grateful to those who even now, around the clock, around the globe, keep us safe. Ladies and gentlemen, 0.5% of Americans serve today in the armed forces. These courageous men and women step forward into harm's way, and we owe them an immense debt of gratitude. Saying thank you is not nearly enough. On this day, we remembered a shared story, one that touches too many parents, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, and children. These families share the common burden that their loved ones have given the last full measure of devotion. They are the guarantors of our freedom. When in harm's way, they must know that their families will be cared for if they do not come back. When injured, they must know that they will receive the finest care anywhere in the world. When their service is complete, they must know that their employers will welcome their skills and talents. And as an employer who has actively sought veterans for key jobs, I ask you, who better to hire than someone possessing the key traits central in all service members? Discipline, commitment, leadership, teamwork, honor, and loyalty. Our service members and veterans offer our nation so much, both in uniform and out, as they are always there for us. Let us commit to always being there for them. And as we do today, let us never forget those who gave all. Mr. Mayor, we're honored that you have joined us today as you have for every Memorial Day of your administration. You have brought your personal commitment to our city's veterans, stemming in large part, I am sure, from your and the First Lady's parents' service. You and your team, Commissioner Sutton, chief amongst them, always keep our veterans top of mind, and your actions bear that out. For that, we thank you. It is my honor to introduce an outstanding public servant. He served 8 years on the New York City Council, focusing his efforts on improving public education, engaging parents, expanding public housing, and protecting New York's middle class and working poor. In 2010, he was sworn in as public advocate, the second highest citywide elected office. And in 2013, he took office as the 109th mayor of our great city. As mayor, he is committed to making sure that every child receives a great education, protecting New York City streets and communities, and building a city where New Yorkers from all 5 boroughs can start and build a successful business, raising their families and afford to live while affording to live in their neighborhoods. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Mayor of New York City, the Honorable Bill de Blasio. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I want to thank you and Ken Fisher for all you have done to keep this museum strong and to keep it a focal point for this city. And this is one of the places we gather in this city, not just on Memorial Day, but regularly to appreciate and remember all that our service members have done for us. So thank you, Bruce, for your deep commitment. I want to say to everyone, this has been a Fleet Week that started, as each one does, with such appreciation, such celebration, such joy to have members of our armed service among us here in this city. It is a special time each year. But unfortunately, as we know, as Fleet Week ends, it ends with deep, deep sorrow. And I know on behalf of all 8.5 million New Yorkers, we are feeling sadness, we are feeling sympathy and solidarity with the family of the Navy SEAL we lost just yesterday. We're feeling sympathy not just for his birth family, but for his larger family, the men and women of the U.S. Navy. I have to tell you that all of us admire the Navy SEALs. We know so many times Navy SEALs do things that very few others could do to protect all of us. And it's a shock to see this loss. But our solidarity with the SEALs is strong. I'd like to ask you all for a moment of silence on behalf of the fallen sailor. Thank you, and I want to ask you for one other moment of reflection. And I know so many here who serve in our military or have served in our military also share a deep, deep respect for our first responders. And so many of our first responders served in the military before the great work they do protecting us every day in their civilian capacities. Well, we lost a good man and a man who went to bat for all those who had suffered as a result of their service at Ground Zero and in the months after during the rescue and recovery efforts. That history of those who selflessly went to the scene of our greatest tragedy in the history of this city and served, and then for far too many lived with the results for years and years after. We are still losing good men and women who went that day and those weeks after selflessly, but one among them stood out because he fought for all, not just those from the New York area, but those who came from all over this country, who came to this site to help. Firefighter Ray Pfeiffer led the charge for the Zadroga bill. Literally, despite his illness, despite his disability, going to Washington time and time again, being an example to all of what it meant to stand up for your brother and sister first responders. And we lost him, but let me tell you, very few people have lived better than Ray Pfeiffer or done more for their fellow men and women. Please join me in a moment of silence for firefighter Ray Pfeiffer. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to all who are here, and a special thank you and deep appreciation to all who serve us in the armed forces, all the first responders here, all the veterans here. We can only begin to thank you for all you do for us. Now, you've heard from some wonderful people, and I want to just say a few things about them. Admiral, I think you did something extraordinary just a few moments ago. I was listening carefully to the Admiral's very heartfelt words, and if you listened, you heard something that we could all believe in as Americans. It's a big country, a country diverse in every sense, a country with different viewpoints, to say the least, but Admiral, you summarize what unites us. And I want to thank you for that. That's another thing we should remember on Memorial Day, that there are some bonds that are stronger than any differences. And Admiral, I think you, with a full heart, reminded us of something we all believe in together. Let's thank the Admiral for those powerful words. I want to thank Captain Jordan Mojer for his very powerful thoughts. I want to thank Susan Marinoff-Zausner for her leadership of this great museum, and Mel Immergut as well for all they have done, and of course Joe Litschauer for all you do on behalf of those who served on this extraordinary ship. And a special thank you. I don't think there really are words to express both our appreciation and our marvel for the achievements of these two gentlemen here who served at Pearl Harbor, John Seeley and Armando Chick Galela. I gotta say thank you. I had a moment, and it was a wonderful moment, to speak to Chick Galela about his service. And I did not know that in addition to his service at Pearl Harbor, he had served on Okinawa. And I talked to him about my own father's service. They were both in the Army on Okinawa. And I said to him, I had such admiration for what Chick had done and such honor for what my father had done. I said, I wonder if somewhere along the way you two crossed paths. And he said, maybe we did, but I know we'll cross paths again in heaven. Well, Chick, that's a beautiful thought. But Chick, I saw you dancing with Susan over there earlier when the band was playing. I think it's going to be quite a while before you get up there, so we're going to enjoy your presence right here with us. God bless you. And also a deep thanks to my colleagues in government. I have to tell you, here in New York City, we have one of the largest communities of veterans anywhere in the country, as General Laurie Sutton will tell you. 200,000 strong, is that right, General? We honor those veterans by action in every way we can. And I want to give a special thanks to our City Council and Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, who led the charge for the creation of a Department of Veterans Services as part of our city government, so we could do more, not less, we could do more for our veterans. Speaker, thank you, and everyone in the City Council for your commitment. And I mentioned General Laurie Sutton, who is the inaugural commissioner for the Department of Veterans Services and is tireless in looking out for every way this city can serve our veterans. Thank you to you and Commissioner Tom Finkelpearl, our Cultural Affairs Commissioner, who reminds us this is also a great cultural site, this beautiful museum. Let's thank Laurie and Tom for all they do. I think a lot of you know what this ship went through. For those of us who were children of the World War II generation, you say the word intrepid, and a special atmosphere would take over the room because this ship was known for the most extraordinary feats. And I think for younger generations, it may be hard at first blush to fully understand what happened on this ship and around this ship, but there's a reason it's here in the largest city in this country as a focal point, as one of the things we're proudest of, because intrepid only begins to describe the perseverance and the strength associated with the ship and the good men who served on it. It was attacked many times, survived a torpedo attack and 4 kamikaze attacks, and somehow kept going, and played a crucial role in defeating the legendary Japanese battleship Yamato. And for a whole generation, when they thought of the Intrepid, it reminded them to keep going. It reminded them that they could overcome what appeared to be impossible odds. You know, it is a blessing for my family to have received those extraordinary memories of World War II, to have a little bit of insight into what it was to have a nation so united, because so many people served. And not just the frontline members of the armed service. So many people served on the home front as well, men and women alike. And that was true in our family, and that was true in families all over this country. And there was a sense of unity and solidarity that came with that. And I think that probably helped people to understand the full meaning of Memorial Day and to keep it close, to keep it full in their hearts. Here's why it's so important. Because there's an unbroken chain literally going back to the founding of this republic, and all of us are a part of it, every single family in some way. You know, Admiral, when you were speaking, I couldn't help but thinking of those who served and those who died here in this city in defense of our nation in the Battle of Long Island, which took place largely in Brooklyn, where the main body of the American forces were saved from capture by the British by a brave Maryland regiment that held off a much superior force back in 1776. Well, part of the same armed forces we celebrate today. If you go to Fort Greene, Brooklyn, there is a memorial to American patriots who were kept on British prison ships. It's a very visible memorial. A lot of New Yorkers and Americans don't know what it stands for. It stands for those who served their country and then suffered as prisoners of war. Well, that's a long time ago. But that beginning of our nation, it was made possible because everyday people, farmers and tradespeople and artisans decided they believed in the idea of liberty that had never been achieved anywhere else in the world, and they put their lives on the line. And we celebrate them just as we celebrate the fallen hero we lost yesterday. It's an unbroken chain, and it's something very powerful. And it's something that should lead us on Memorial Day to remember the humanity of these good people, their belief, their willingness to come forward, again, many times against all the odds. That's, to me, what Memorial Day is, a chance to remember more deeply. And then it's also a chance to remember the families, because any family touched by war carries those challenges forward. I can say from my own experience, what happened to my dad on Okinawa continued to affect our family for decades thereafter. And I know so many people in this room understand that. So when we think about Memorial Day, we don't just think about those who are lost. We think about those who raised them. We think about those who love them. We think about those who feel an emptiness because they're gone, and we need to be there for them as well. Memorial Day should not just be about a sense of the past. It has to have a living, strong component, too, that's about those who carry on. And finally, we think, of course, about those serving us now and those who have served us, but for whom we have to do more. I'll tell you, when I first started to understand that there were veterans who had become homeless, it made no sense to me. And I'll tell you that in this city, we were so upset at that notion. We put our shoulders to the wheel. We worked with public sector and private sector alike. And over the last 2 years, we ended chronic veteran homelessness in New York City. It had to end. We have to have an attitude that no veteran should ever feel alone. How could someone who stood up for all of us ever feel alone? But tragically, it still happens. So for all of us, every one of us, it should be our obligation, whether it's helping a veteran to find a home, to get a job, to get the mental health services they may need, whatever it is. That's another way of us all paying our debt to those who have served us. That work goes on. And the simplest way I conclude would be to say this: never take it for granted. It's a challenge to every one of us. Never take for granted that people have chosen to put on a uniform and risk their lives. Never take it for granted. Stop to think about it, and then ask yourself the question: What am I doing? What can I do for those who have served? What can I do for the families who lost a loved one in service? What can I do to remember them with the fullest heart every day? That's the mission for all of us. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Mayor, thank you so very much.
Yeah, they're going to throw the food over the side.
So you'll take the
I'll get down.
Yeah, then you can get on top of me. And then we're gonna walk to me. Alright, turn this way towards the media. Face this way, get everyone in. Alright, go ahead. 1, 2.
Off. Somebody right. Four.
We're gonna turn this way to face the media. We don't wanna block you. Yeah, let's get close.
Yeah. Put your head down.
Alright, let's all look at the media first.
Lower the cameras in the front.
Lower the cameras down.
Lower the cameras in the front, please.
One, two.
Sorry. Sorry. I'm going up. I'm going up.
Excuse me.
Walk this way a little bit more.
После официальной части идет церемония возложения венков.
Look up this way.
После официальной части идет церемония возложения венков. Ну, сейчас соответственно возложение. После официальной части идет церемония возложения венков, хотя точнее возложения. Венки просто выбрасывают в воды Гудзонского залива. Это делается для того, чтобы почтить память всех солдат, моряков, вооруженных сил Соединенных Штатов, кто погиб вообще во всех войнах, а также всех их союзников.
Hey, Mark, are you taking iPhone video? Yeah, thank you.
После официальной части идет церемония возложения венков, хотя если утверждение, то это не совсем возложение. Венки скидывают в воду Гудзонского залива.
Tom, straight ahead. Tom, up here.
Демонстрирует память, почтение всех воинов Соединенных Штатов, которые погибли во всех вооруженных конфликтах. Также опыт жизни с воинами Соединенных Штатов. Венки закончились.
Today to come forward and take hold of this flag. And raise the flag together in honor of our gallant comrades throughout the world. Following the flag unfurling, a detail from Naval Weapons Station Earl will fire a 3 rifle salute, and the Navy Band Northeast will perform tasks.
пожалуй, самое зрелищное военнослужащих гигантское полотно.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to Intrepid. We ask you to remember those who have fallen and for joining us for this very special service. We are grateful. God bless you. God bless America.
Yeah, good.